What do you call an empire that lasts twice as long as ancient Rome, conquers 3 continents, and changes the course of world history? The Ottomans, and their story, is more incredible than you could imagine. We're unveiling the entire 623-year saga of the Ottoman Empire, from tribal origins to global domination. Get ready for a historical roller coaster that will leave you speechless. The roots of the Ottoman Empire can be traced back to the Kayı tribe, a branch of the Oghuz Turks. These nomadic people hailed from the vast steppes of Central Asia, known for their fierce warrior culture and military prowess. In the 13th century, as the Mongol hordes swept across Asia, the Kayı, like many other tribes, were forced to flee their ancestral lands. Led by Ertuğrul Gazi, the Kayı made their way into Anatolia, eventually settling near the town of Seljuk. This region, on the fringes of the Byzantine Empire, would become the cradle of the Ottoman power. At the time, the dominant force in Anatolia was the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum, and the Kayı initially pledged their allegiance to these Turkish rulers. However, the political landscape of Anatolia was in flux. In 1243, the Seljuks suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of the Mongols in the Battle of Kosedag. This event marked the beginning of the end for Seljuk power in the region, creating a power vacuum that smaller Turkish beyliks or principalities began to fill. It was in this context that Ertuğrul's son, Osman I, rose to prominence. Taking leadership of the Kayı around 1280, Osman proved to be an ambitious and capable leader. As Seljuk influence waned, Osman began to expand his territory, pushing into Byzantine lands and attracting followers with his military successes. A key factor in the early success of the Ottomans was their adoption of the Ghazi identity. The concept of the Ghazi, or warrior of Islam, held great appeal in the frontier regions of Anatolia. It allowed the Ottomans to attract warriors from neighboring tribes, and even from Christian lands, swelling their ranks with men eager for conquest and glory. The legend of Osman's dream became a powerful symbol of Ottoman destiny. According to the tale, Osman dreamt of a great tree growing from his chest, its branches spreading to cover the world. This vision was interpreted as a divine sign of the future greatness of the Ottoman state, inspiring generations of rulers and subjects alike. While Osman's dream foretold greatness, it was his practical actions that transformed this vision into reality. The rise of the Ottoman Empire hinged on a delicate balance of military might and political savvy that would reshape the map of Anatolia. Osman I, also known as Osman Gazi, took the reins of his father Ertuğrul's small frontier principality and began to expand its influence. His strategic moves and charismatic leadership would lay the groundwork for an empire that would endure for centuries. While Osman's dream foretold greatness, it was his practical actions that transformed this vision into reality. The rise of the Ottoman Empire hinged on a delicate balance of military might and political savvy that would reshape the map of Anatolia. Osman I, also known as Osman Gazi, took the reins from his father Ertuğrul's small frontier principality and began to expand its influence. His strategic moves and charismatic leadership would lay the groundwork for an empire that would endure for centuries. In 1299, Osman made a bold move that would change the course of history. He officially declared independence from the declining Seljuk Sultanate, marking the birth of the Ottoman Empire. This act of defiance was not merely symbolic. It was a calculated risk that positioned the Ottomans to fill the power vacuum left by the crumbling Seljuk state. With newfound autonomy, Osman set his sights on the weakened Byzantine frontier towns. His forces, driven by the Ghazi warrior ethos, targeted key strongholds that would strengthen their position in the region. The captures of Bilecik, Yenisehir, and Inegöl were significant victories that demonstrated the growing power of the Ottoman state. These conquests not only expanded Ottoman territory, but also provided strategic locations for further expansion. The Ghazi warrior ethos proved to be a powerful force in fueling Ottoman expansion. This ideology, which combined religious fervor with military prowess, attracted new fighters who were committed to spreading Islam into Christian territories. The promise of conquest and religious duty drew warriors from various backgrounds, swelling the ranks of Osman's forces and providing a steady stream of motivated soldiers. As the Ottoman state grew, so did the need for organization and administration. Osman established Yenisehir as the first Ottoman administrative center, creating a hub from which he could manage his expanding territories. This move demonstrated Osman's foresight in recognizing that military conquest alone was not enough to build a lasting empire. Effective governance was equally crucial. One of the key strengths of the early Ottoman military was its flexibility and inclusivity. Osman developed a system that incorporated both Turkic nomads and Christian mercenaries, creating a diverse and potent fighting force. This approach not only strengthened their military capabilities, but also laid the foundation for the multicultural empire that the Ottomans would become. By embracing warriors from different backgrounds, Osman created a military that was adaptable and capable of facing a variety of challenges. Perhaps one of the most significant military campaigns of Osman's reign was the Siege of Bursa. This long-term operation began under Osman's leadership, though the city would not fall until shortly after his death in 1326, under the rule of his son Orhan Gazi. The Siege of Bursa demonstrated the Ottomans' growing military capabilities and their ability to undertake prolonged campaigns against well-fortified Byzantine cities. As Osman's son, Orhan Gazi, took the reins of power in 1326, the Ottoman state stood at a pivotal crossroads. The young principality was poised for transformation, and Orhan's reign would see it evolve from a frontier beylik into a formidable empire straddling two continents. This period of early expansion set the stage for centuries of Ottoman dominance in the region. Orhan's first major accomplishment was the completion of the conquest of Bursa, a campaign initiated by his father. The fall of this strategically important Byzantine city marked a significant milestone for the Ottomans. Bursa became the first official Ottoman capital, signaling the transition from a nomadic tribal structure to a more settled state. This shift was further solidified by Orhan's introduction of the first Ottoman currency, the silver akçe, which helped standardize trade and taxation within the growing realm. The new ruler recognized the need for a more structured administration to govern his expanding territories. He established a centralized bureaucracy, laying the groundwork for the complex Ottoman governmental system that would develop over the following centuries. This administrative evolution was crucial in managing the diverse populations now under Ottoman control and in organizing resources for further expansion. Orhan's military campaigns focused primarily on Byzantine territories in northwestern Anatolia. By 1331, the Ottomans captured the city of Nicaea, known to the Turks as Iznik. This former Byzantine capital had served as a symbol of Christian resistance in Anatolia and its fall represented a significant blow to Byzantine power in the region. 6 years later, in 1337, the important port city of Nicomedia, or Izmit, also fell to Ottoman forces, further cementing their control over the region and providing access to the Sea of Marmara. Perhaps the most consequential event of Orhan's reign occurred in 1354, when the Ottomans first crossed into Europe. An earthquake had severely damaged the Byzantine defenses at Gallipoli, and Ottoman forces seized the opportunity to capture this strategic peninsula. The foothold on the European continent would prove crucial for future Ottoman expansion into the Balkans, opening up new avenues for conquest and setting the stage for the empire's eventual domination of southeastern Europe. Orhan also made significant changes to the Ottoman military structure, most notably with the creation of the Janissary Corps. This elite infantry unit was composed of Christian youths converted to Islam through the devshirme system, a practice of conscription that would become a hallmark of Ottoman military recruitment. The Janissaries, trained from childhood and loyal directly to the Sultan, formed the core of the Ottoman army and would play a crucial role in future conquests. As Murad I ascended to the Ottoman throne in 1362, the empire stood at a crossroads. The young sultan, son of Orhan Gazi, recognized that the future of Ottoman power lay not in Anatolia, but across the Bosphorus in the Balkans. This shift in focus would transform the Ottoman state from a regional power to a formidable empire straddling two continents. Murad's first major conquest came in 1369, when Ottoman forces captured the city of Adrianople, known today as Edirne. This strategic victory had far-reaching consequences. Adrianople, with its prime location in southeastern Europe, became the new Ottoman capital. The move signaled the empire's commitment to European expansion and provided a launchpad for further campaigns into the Balkans. But Murad's ambitions required more than just territorial gains. He needed a powerful and loyal military force to support his expansionist agenda. To this end, Murad formalized and expanded the devshirme system. This controversial practice involved the systematic recruitment of Christian boys from conquered territories. These youths were converted to Islam and trained to serve in the elite Janissary Corps or in the Ottoman administration. The devshirme system had a profound impact on the empire's military and administrative capabilities. It provided a steady stream of highly trained and loyal soldiers, creating a powerful standing army that could rival any in Europe. Moreover, it helped to integrate conquered populations into the Ottoman system, as some of these recruits rose to high positions within the empire's hierarchy. Murad's military prowess was put to the test in 1371 at the Battle of Maritsa. A coalition of Serbian nobles seeking to push back against Ottoman expansion marched against the Sultan's forces. The battle ended in a decisive Ottoman victory, cementing their dominance in the region and opening the way for future conquests. In the wake of this victory, Murad employed a shrewd strategy of imposing vassalage on many Balkan states. Instead of outright conquest, which would have been costly and potentially destabilizing, he forced these states to pay tribute while allowing them to maintain a degree of local autonomy. This approach expanded Ottoman influence without the need for constant warfare, creating a network of client states that served as a buffer zone and a source of revenue for the empire. The pinnacle of Murad's reign came in 1389 with the Battle of Kosovo. The clash between Ottoman forces and a coalition of Balkan states led by Serbian Prince Lazar would prove to be a turning point in the history of southeastern Europe. The battle was hard fought, with heavy losses on both sides. In a dramatic turn of events, Murad himself was assassinated on the battlefield by a Serbian noble who had feigned surrender to get close to the Sultan. Despite Murad's death, the Ottomans emerged strategically victorious from the Battle of Kosovo. The Serbian-led coalition was shattered, and Ottoman control over the region was solidified. This victory marked the effective end of Serbian independence and paved the way for Ottoman domination of the Balkans for centuries to come. Murad's reign was transformative for the Ottoman state. He established the Balkans as a key frontier of Ottoman power, shifting the empire's center of gravity westward. His military successes expanded Ottoman territory significantly, while his administrative reforms strengthened central control over the empire's diverse populations. The introduction of new governing structures was particularly important. Murad divided conquered territories into military fiefs, known as timars, which were granted to Ottoman cavalry officers in exchange for military service. This system allowed the Ottomans to maintain a large, self-sustaining military force while also providing a mechanism for administering newly conquered lands. As Bayezid I took the reins of the Ottoman Empire in 1389, he inherited a realm poised for greatness. Unlike his predecessors who methodically expanded their territories, Bayezid embarked on an aggressive campaign of conquest that would push the empire to its zenith, and ultimately to the brink of disaster. Bayezid's military prowess quickly became apparent as he swept through the Balkans and Anatolia. Bulgaria fell under Ottoman control, and large swaths of Serbia succumbed to his forces. In Anatolia, numerous beyliks, small Turkish principalities, were absorbed into the growing empire. This rapid expansion transformed the Ottomans from a regional power into a formidable force spanning 2 continents. In 1394, Bayezid set his sights on the ultimate prize, Constantinople. The once mighty Byzantine capital had long been a thorn in the side of Ottoman ambitions. Bayezid initiated a blockade of the city, hoping to starve it into submission. However, the ancient walls of Constantinople, coupled with aid from Western Europe, allowed the city to withstand Ottoman pressure. This siege, while unsuccessful, signaled the growing threat the Ottomans posed to the heart of Christendom. The Ottoman advance did not go unnoticed in Europe. In 1396, a coalition of European powers, responding to calls for a crusade, assembled a formidable army to challenge Ottoman dominance in the Balkans. Led by King Sigismund of Hungary, this force met Bayezid's army at the Battle of Nicopolis. The ensuing clash resulted in a decisive Ottoman victory, shattering Western hopes of rolling back Ottoman gains. This triumph cemented Ottoman control over much of southeastern Europe and demonstrated their military superiority over the divided Christian powers. Bayezid's reign also saw significant internal developments that strengthened the Ottoman state. He continued the process of centralization, streamlining the empire's administration to better manage its rapidly expanding territories. The Janissary Corps, the elite military unit established by his grandfather Orhan, grew in size and importance under Bayezid's rule. In a bold move that revealed his imperial ambitions, Bayezid adopted the title Sultan of Rum. This proclamation positioned him as the rightful heir to the Byzantine legacy, laying claim to all former Byzantine territories. It was a clear challenge to the beleaguered Byzantine Empire and a statement of Ottoman intentions to dominate the region. However, Bayezid's relentless expansion and grandiose ambitions would ultimately prove his undoing. As the Ottoman Empire reached its apex, a new threat emerged from the east. Timur, also known as Tamerlane, a Turco-Mongol conqueror who had carved out a vast empire in Central Asia, set his sights on Anatolia. In 1402, the two great powers collided at the Battle of Ankara. The battle proved catastrophic for the Ottomans. Bayezid's forces, exhausted from years of continuous campaigning, were no match for Timur's battle-hardened army. The Ottoman army was routed, and Bayezid himself was captured. This shocking defeat shattered the aura of Ottoman invincibility and threw the empire into chaos. Bayezid's capture marked the beginning of a dark chapter in Ottoman history. The Sultan, once the terror of Europe and Asia Minor, died in captivity the following year. His defeat triggered a period known as the Ottoman Interregnum, where Bayezid's sons fought for control of the fragmented empire. For over a decade, the Ottoman state teetered on the brink of collapse, its future uncertain. The Ottoman Interregnum, a chaotic period spanning from 1402 to 1413, marked a critical juncture in the empire's history. Following the Battle of Ankara in 1402, where the formidable Timur decisively defeated the Ottoman forces, the empire found itself suddenly thrust into a state of disarray. The capture of Sultan Bayezid I shattered the centralized authority that had been the cornerstone of Ottoman power. With Bayezid's subsequent death in captivity, the empire plunged into a protracted civil war. His four sons, Suleiman, Isa, Musa, and Mehmet, each staked their claim to the throne, fracturing the once unified empire into rival territories. The brothers controlled different regions across Anatolia and the Balkans, engaging in a complex series of alliances, betrayals, and brutal conflicts. This fragmentation was further exacerbated by Timur's deliberate strategy to weaken Ottoman control. By restoring semi-independent beyliks in Anatolia, Timur effectively dismantled the carefully constructed Ottoman power structure in the region. These newly empowered beyliks, eager to assert their independence, added another layer of complexity to the already volatile political landscape. The consequences of this internal strife were far-reaching. The Ottoman Empire's rapid expansion, which had been a hallmark of its rise to power, ground to a halt. Former vassal states in the Balkans, sensing weakness in their once mighty overlord, seized the opportunity to reclaim their independence. The empire that had struck fear into the hearts of its neighbors now found itself struggling to maintain control over its existing territories. As the civil war raged on, the empire's resources were steadily drained. The conflict consumed not only the military might of the Ottomans, but also their economic and administrative capabilities. Internal unrest became widespread as the population suffered under the weight of constant warfare and political instability. The brothers' struggle for supremacy played out across the empire's territories. Suleiman initially held sway in the European provinces, while Isa controlled much of western Anatolia. Mehmet, the youngest, maintained his base of power in north-central Anatolia. Musa, initially allied with Mehmet, later turned against him in a bid for power in the Balkans. The conflict saw numerous twists and turns. Suleiman, despite his initial strong position, was eventually defeated by Musa in 1411. Musa's reign in the European provinces was short-lived, however, as Mehmet, with support from the Byzantine Empire Manuel II Palaeologus, crossed into Europe and defeated him in 1413. The Ottoman state's vulnerability became glaringly apparent. The dispute over succession highlighted the potential for dynastic conflicts to tear apart even the most powerful of empires. It underscored the critical importance of strong, centralized leadership in maintaining the cohesion of such a vast and diverse state. The interregnum also had profound effects on Ottoman military and administrative structures. The Timar system, which had been a cornerstone of Ottoman military organization, was disrupted as different factions awarded land grants to secure loyalty. This would have long-lasting implications for the empire's ability to maintain its military strength. From the ashes of conflict, a new leader emerged to reshape the Ottoman Empire. Mehmet I, the youngest son of Bayezid I, rose to power in 1433 after a decade of civil war. His task was monumental: to transform a fractured state back into a formidable power. The Ottoman interregnum had left deep scars, but Mehmet's reign would prove crucial in restoring the empire's strength and setting the stage for future expansion. Mehmet's first challenge was to reclaim lost territories and re-establish Ottoman dominance. In Anatolia, he faced the daunting task of reintegrating rebellious beyliks that had regained autonomy during the Civil War. These small principalities, once loyal to the Ottoman banner, now resisted central authority. Mehmet employed a combination of diplomacy and military force to bring them back into the fold. He negotiated with some beylik leaders, offering them positions within the Ottoman administration in exchange for their allegiance. For those who refused, Mehmet launched targeted military campaigns, gradually reasserting Ottoman control over the Anatolian heartland. The Balkans presented another complex challenge. During the interregnum, many former vassal states had seized the opportunity to break free from Ottoman influence. Mehmet worked tirelessly to reassert Ottoman vassalage over key regions like Serbia and Wallachia. His approach was nuanced, recognizing that outright conquest might provoke united resistance. Instead, he used a mix of diplomatic pressure, strategic alliances, and limited military interventions to maintain Ottoman influence in the region. Mehmet's efforts to secure the empire's borders were not limited to reconquest. He also sought to build alliances with neighboring states, recognizing the importance of stability for the empire's recovery. This diplomatic approach helped to create buffer zones and reduce the immediate threats to Ottoman territory, allowing Mehmet to focus on internal consolidation. The Byzantine Empire, though a shadow of its former self, remained a thorn in the Ottoman side. Constantinople, the jewel of the Eastern Mediterranean, still stood as a symbol of Byzantine resilience. Mehmet, however, chose a path of calculated restraint. Rather than launching a costly siege that might strain his recovering empire, he maintained a delicate balance of pressure and diplomacy with the Byzantines. This strategy kept Constantinople contained while allowing Mehmet to focus on more pressing matters of imperial reconstruction. Internally, Mehmet faced the enormous task of rebuilding the administrative system that had been severely disrupted during the Civil War. He worked to re-establish the Timar system, the backbone of Ottoman military and administrative organization. This involved reassigning land grants to loyal supporters and ensuring that the cavalry forces, so crucial to Ottoman military success, were properly maintained and equipped. Economic recovery was another key focus of Mehmet's reign. The years of civil war had severely disrupted trade networks both within the empire and with neighboring states. Mehmet took steps to re-establish these vital economic arteries. He encouraged commerce by improving roads, protecting merchant caravans, and negotiating trade agreements with neighboring powers. These efforts gradually revitalized the Ottoman economy, filling the imperial coffers and providing the resources needed for future expansion. As Mehmet I's reign drew to a close, the Ottoman Empire stood on the precipice of a new era. In 1421, Murad II ascended to the throne, inheriting a realm that had only recently emerged from the turmoil of civil war. The young sultan faced immediate challenges that threatened to unravel his father's hard-won stability. Internal rebellions simmered, while external threats loomed, both from the Byzantine Empire and rival Anatolian beyliks. Murad's first test came early in his reign when he confronted a major revolt supported by the Byzantines. This rebellion, which sought to exploit the perceived weakness of the new sultan, threatened to undo the careful work of restoration undertaken by Mehmet I. However, Murad proved himself a capable leader, swiftly moving to suppress the uprising. His decisive action not only solidified his position on the throne, but also reasserted Ottoman control over key Anatolian territories that had wavered in their loyalty. With internal threats quelled, Murad turned his gaze outward, particularly toward the Balkans. The region had long been a focus of Ottoman expansion, but now Murad sought to consolidate and extend Ottoman power more thoroughly than ever before. His campaigns targeted Serbia, Wallachia, and Albania, aiming to transform these areas from loosely controlled vassals into integral parts of the Ottoman domain. Simultaneously, Murad began to extend Ottoman influence northward into Hungary, setting the stage for future conflicts that would shape the balance of power in Eastern Europe. The pinnacle of Murad's military achievements came in 1444 at the Battle of Varna. This engagement pitted Ottoman forces against a formidable Christian coalition led by Polish and Hungarian forces. The Crusaders, emboldened by recent successes and hoping to push the Ottomans out of Europe, marched confidently into battle. However, Murad's tactical acumen and the discipline of his troops proved decisive. The Ottoman victory at Varna not only shattered the Christian alliance, but also secured Ottoman dominance in the Balkans for generations to come. Despite this triumph, Murad's reign was not without its persistent challenges. Chief among these was the ongoing resistance led by the Albanian leader Skanderbeg. Skanderbeg's rebellion, which began in 1443, would prove to be a thorn in the side of Ottoman control in the region for decades. The Albanian leader's guerrilla tactics and intimate knowledge of the mountainous terrain frustrated Ottoman attempts to fully subdue the area, showcasing the limits of Ottoman power, even at the height of their Balkan dominance. In a surprising move that demonstrated both the complexity of Ottoman politics and Murad's own character, the Sultan temporarily abdicated the throne in favor of his son, Mehmet II, in 1444. This decision, likely motivated by a desire for respite from the burdens of rule, proved short-lived. The instability caused by having a youthful and inexperienced ruler during a time of ongoing conflict soon became apparent. Recognizing the potential dangers, Murad returned to power shortly after, reassuming control of the empire he had so carefully shaped. The later years of Murad's reign were marked by a focus on consolidation and preparation. Understanding the importance of secure borders for the empire's future expansion, Murad invested heavily in strengthening Ottoman fortresses throughout the Balkans and Anatolia. These fortifications served not only as defensive bulwarks, but also as launching points for future campaigns, embodying the forward-thinking strategy that characterized Murad's rule. As Murad II's reign drew to a close, the Ottoman Empire stood poised on the brink of a new era. In 1451, a young and ambitious sultan ascended the throne, his eyes fixed on a prize that had eluded his predecessors for centuries. Mehmed II, barely 19 years old, harbored a singular vision: the conquest of Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine Empire. Mehmet's preparations were meticulous and far-reaching. Understanding the strategic importance of controlling access to the city, he ordered the construction of a massive fortress on the European side of the Bosporus Strait. This imposing structure, known as Rumeli Hisari, was completed in just 4 months. Its cannons could now control naval traffic, effectively cutting off potential aid to Constantinople from the Black Sea. But Mehmet's most formidable weapon was yet to come. He enlisted the services of a Hungarian engineer named Orban, who designed and cast a series of enormous cannons. These behemoths, some measuring over 8 meters in length, were capable of hurling stone balls weighing up to 600 kilograms. Such firepower had never before been seen in siege warfare. In April 1453, Mehmet launched his assault on Constantinople. The city's defenses, which had repelled attacks for over a millennium, now faced their greatest test. For 53 days, the Ottoman forces battered the ancient walls with relentless cannon fire. Inside the city, the Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI and his outnumbered defenders fought desperately to hold their ground. The siege reached its climax on May 29, 1453. In the early hours of the morning, Ottoman troops breached the walls and poured into the city. The last Byzantine Empire fell in the fierce street fighting that followed. By nightfall, the Ottomans had achieved what many had thought impossible. Constantinople, the heart of the Eastern Roman Empire for over 1,000 years, had fallen. Mehmet wasted no time in transforming his hard-won prize. He immediately set about restoring and revitalizing the city, which had suffered from years of decline and neglect. The young sultan envisioned a new imperial capital that would rival the greatest cities of the world. He encouraged immigration across his realm, bringing in skilled artisans, scholars, and merchants to repopulate the city. In a stroke of political and religious symbolism, Mehmet converted the Hagia Sophia, the great cathedral of Eastern Christianity, into a mosque. Yet he also took steps to protect the city's Christian and Jewish communities, understanding that their skills and connections would be vital to the city's future prosperity. This policy of relative religious tolerance would become a hallmark of Ottoman rule in the centuries to come. With Constantinople secured, Mehmet turned his attention to expanding and consolidating Ottoman power. He led campaigns deep into the Balkans, conquering Serbia in 1459 and effectively ending its independence. The following year saw the fall of Morea in southern Greece, and in 1461, the Empire of Trebizond on the Black Sea coast surrendered to Ottoman forces. These conquests eliminated the last vestiges of Byzantine rule and solidified Ottoman control over the region. Mehmet's ambitions stretched beyond the immediate vicinity of his new capital. He launched campaigns into Bosnia and Albania, facing fierce resistance from local leaders like Skanderbeg. In Anatolia, he brought the remaining Turkish beyliks under Ottoman control, creating a more unified Turkish state. His forces even crossed the Black Sea to secure control over the Crimean Peninsula, extending Ottoman influence into the steppes of Eastern Europe. The Sultan's military successes were matched by his efforts to strengthen the empire's institutions. He overhauled the Ottoman legal system, issuing a new code of laws that would serve as the foundation for Ottoman governance for centuries. He also patronized the arts and sciences, attracting scholars and artists from across the Islamic world to his court in Istanbul. Imagine an empire at its peak, poised for further conquest, and then imagine its new ruler choosing a radically different path. As Bayezid II ascended the throne in 1481, he inherited not just a vast territory, but also a looming question. Could the Ottomans thrive without constant warfare? The son of Mehmet II, Bayezid faced a monumental task: transforming a war machine into a stable, diverse civilization. His reign would mark a shift from conquest to consolidation, testing the empire's capacity for diplomacy and internal growth in ways never before seen. Bayezid's succession was not without its challenges. His early reign was marred by a bitter succession struggle with his brother, Kem Sultan. This conflict would have far-reaching consequences, extending beyond the borders of the Ottoman Empire. After his defeat, Kem sought refuge in Europe, setting off a complex diplomatic dance involving the Pope and various European monarchs. For years, Kem's presence in Christian lands would serve as a bargaining chip, influencing Ottoman foreign policy and forcing Bayezid to navigate a delicate balance of threats and negotiations. With the immediate threat to his rule contained, Bayezid turned his attention inward. He prioritized internal stability, working to strengthen central authority and implement policies that would encourage economic growth across the empire. Infrastructure development became a key focus, with the Sultan investing in roads, bridges, and public buildings. These efforts not only improved the lives of Ottoman subjects, but also facilitated trade and communication across the vast territories under Bayezid's rule. Perhaps one of the most significant acts of Bayezid's reign came in response to events far beyond Ottoman borders. In 1492, as the Spanish Inquisition reached its height, thousands of Sephardic Jews faced expulsion from Spain. Bayezid saw an opportunity where others saw only religious outcasts. He extended a welcoming hand, granting safe haven to these refugees within Ottoman lands. Cities like Istanbul and Salonika soon found an influx of skilled artisans, merchants, and scholars, enriching the empire's cultural and economic life in ways that would be felt for generations. This act of tolerance was not merely altruistic. It was a shrewd political and economic move. The influx of Jewish refugees brought new skills, trade connections, and intellectual capital to the Ottoman Empire. It also stood in stark contrast to the religious persecution occurring in many parts of Europe, reinforcing the Ottoman Empire's image as a realm of relative religious freedom and cultural diversity. While Bayezid's reign is often characterized by its focus on diplomacy and internal development, the Ottoman military was not entirely idle. Moderate campaigns continued, securing control over parts of the Peloponnese and expanding Ottoman influence in the Black Sea region. The navy, though not yet the dominant force it would become under future sultans, was strengthened during this period. These efforts ensured Ottoman presence in key maritime trade routes and defended the empire's interests in the Mediterranean. Bayezid's approach to foreign relations was marked by a careful balance of diplomacy and strategic military pressure. He maintained complex relationships with European powers such as Venice and the Habsburg Empire, often using the threat of Ottoman military might as a tool for negotiation rather than outright conquest. This nuanced approach allowed the empire to secure its interests without the constant warfare that had characterized previous reigns. The Sultan's emphasis on religious tolerance extended beyond his welcome of Jewish refugees. Throughout his reign, Bayezid worked to foster cultural diversity within the empire, recognizing that stability in such a vast and varied realm required a degree of flexibility in matters of faith and custom. This policy not only helped maintain internal peace, but also contributed to the empire's reputation as a cosmopolitan center of trade and culture. However, as Bayezid's reign progressed, new challenges emerged. The rise of the Safavid dynasty in Persia presented a growing threat to Ottoman interests in the east. Simultaneously, internal dissent began to simmer, with some factions calling for a return to the more aggressive expansion policies of previous sultans. These pressures would ultimately lead to Bayezid's forced abdication in favor of his son, Selim I, in 1512. Selim I, known as Yavuz or the Grim, seized power through a combination of political maneuvering and ruthless ambition. His ascension marked the beginning of a brief but transformative reign that would alter the course of Ottoman history and reshape the balance of power in the Middle East. Selim's first order of business was to secure his position on the throne. With calculated precision, he eliminated potential rivals, including his own brothers and numerous high-ranking officials. This brutal consolidation of power earned him his ominous moniker and ensured that his rule would be absolute and unchallenged. Unlike his father, Bayezid II, who had focused on diplomatic relations and internal stability, Selim set his sights eastward. The rising power of the Safavid Empire in Persia had become a significant concern for the Ottomans. The Safavids, with their Shia Islamic ideology, posed not only a military threat, but also an ideological challenge to the Sunni Ottoman state. Selim's response was swift and decisive. He launched a series of campaigns against the Safavids, culminating in the Battle of Caldrian in 1514. This pivotal engagement showcased the superiority of Ottoman military tactics and technology. The Ottoman forces, equipped with firearms and artillery, overwhelmed the Safavid cavalry, securing a crushing victory. The Battle of Caldrian not only safeguarded Ottoman control over Anatolia, but also marked the beginning of a centuries-long rivalry between the Ottoman and Safavid empires. With his eastern flank secured, Selim turned his attention southward. The Seljuk Sultanate of Egypt, which controlled vast territories including Syria and the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, became his next target. In a campaign that lasted less than 2 years, Selim's forces decisively defeated the Mamluks in 2 major battles, Marzdebek in 1516 and Ridania in 1517. The conquest of the Mamluk territories had far-reaching consequences for the Ottoman Empire. It brought Egypt, Syria, and the Hijaz under Ottoman control, vastly expanding the empire's territory and resources. The acquisition of Egypt, with its fertile Nile Valley and control over important trade routes, significantly boosted the empire's wealth and economic power. Perhaps even more significant was the religious and political implications of this conquest. With control over Mecca and Medina, the holiest sites in Islam, Selim was able to claim the title of Caliph of Islam. This move transformed the Ottoman Sultan from merely a powerful Muslim ruler into the recognized religious and political leader of the entire Muslim world. The impact of Selim's conquests on Ottoman society and culture was profound. The empire now encompassed a vast territory stretching from the Balkans to Egypt, incorporating diverse populations and cultures. This newfound diversity brought new challenges in governance, but also enriched Ottoman culture as ideas, art, and scholarship flowed more freely across the expanded empire. Selim's reign also saw significant developments in Ottoman naval power. Recognizing the strategic importance of maritime control, he invested in expanding and modernizing the Ottoman fleet. This laid the groundwork for future Ottoman naval dominance in the Mediterranean and Indian Ocean, which would reach its zenith under his successor. When Selim I died unexpectedly in 1520, he left behind an empire transformed. In just 8 years, he had nearly doubled the size of Ottoman territories, secured the empire's eastern borders, and elevated the Ottoman Sultan to the position of Caliph. The stage was set for what would become known as the Golden Age of the Ottoman Empire under his son and successor, Suleiman the Magnificent. As Selim I's body was laid to rest in 1520, few could have predicted the seismic shift about to occur in world politics. His successor, Suleiman I, would not only expand the empire's borders, but redefine the very essence of Ottoman power. Known as Suleiman the Magnificent in the West and Kanuni, the lawgiver, in the Islamic world, this new sultan ushered in what would become known as the Golden Age of the Ottoman Empire. Suleiman wasted no time in asserting Ottoman dominance. In 1521, he captured Belgrade, a strategic fortress that had long resisted Ottoman advances. This victory opened the way for further expansion into Central Europe. Just 5 years later, at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526, Suleiman's forces decisively defeated the Hungarian army, effectively ending Hungarian independence and establishing Ottoman control over much of the region. The young sultan's ambitions knew no bounds. In 1529, he set his sights on Vienna, the heart of Habsburg power. The first siege of Vienna marked the farthest reach of Ottoman expansion into Europe. Though ultimately unsuccessful in capturing the city, the siege sent shockwaves through European courts, cementing the Ottoman Empire's reputation as a formidable military power. Suleiman's conquests were not limited to land. Under the leadership of the brilliant naval commander Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, the Ottoman Navy achieved supremacy in the Mediterranean. This naval dominance allowed for the expansion of Ottoman control along the North African coast and into the Middle East. By the mid-16th century, the Ottoman Empire stretched from Hungary to Yemen and from Algeria to Mesopotamia, encompassing an unprecedented expanse of territory. But Suleiman's legacy extended far beyond military conquests. His reign saw a comprehensive overhaul of the Ottoman legal system, earning him the title the lawgiver. He implemented reforms that touched every aspect of Ottoman society, from criminal law to land management. These legal innovations would shape Ottoman governance for centuries to come. The Sultan's court became a beacon of cultural and artistic achievement. Under Suleiman's patronage, Ottoman architecture reached new heights. The renowned architect Mimar Sinan designed some of the empire's most iconic structures, including the magnificent Süleymaniye Mosque in Istanbul. This architectural masterpiece, with its soaring domes and slender minarets, stands as a testament to the artistic heights achieved during Suleiman's reign. Literature and the arts flourished as well. Poetry, calligraphy, and miniature painting reached unprecedented levels of sophistication. Suleiman himself was an accomplished poet, writing under the pen name Muhibi. His verses, filled with themes of love and spirituality, showcase the refined sensibilities of Ottoman court culture. Suleiman's personal life was as intriguing as his public achievements. His marriage to Hürrem Sultan, also known as Roxolana, broke with Ottoman tradition. A former slave who rose to become Suleiman's legal wife, Hürrem wielded significant influence in the imperial court. Their relationship challenged established norms and reshaped the dynamics of Ottoman royal politics. As Suleiman's reign progressed, the empire faced new challenges. Tensions with the Safavid Empire in Persia led to a series of campaigns in the east. In Europe, the Ottoman advance began to slow, facing increased resistance from Christian powers. Despite these challenges, the empire remained the dominant force in the region. In 1566, at the age of 71, Suleiman embarked on what would be his final campaign. The siege of Szigetvar in Hungary was intended to pave the way for a new push towards Vienna. However, fate had other plans. On September 6, 1566, as Ottoman forces besieged the fortress, Suleiman died in his tent. His death was kept a secret for weeks to prevent demoralization among the troops, a testament to the centrality of his leadership to Ottoman military efforts. As Suleiman's death marked the end of an era on land, another battlefield was about to take center stage. The Mediterranean Sea, once a Roman lake, had become a contested arena where empires clashed for supremacy. The Ottoman Empire, born in the steppes of Anatolia, had transformed into a formidable naval power, challenging the established maritime nations of Europe. The 16th century saw the Ottomans aggressively expand their naval capabilities. Under the leadership of the legendary Admiral Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, Ottoman ships patrolled the waters from the Aegean to the coast of North Africa. Barbarossa's tactical genius and daring raids struck fear into the hearts of Christian sailors and secured key victories for the empire. These triumphs allowed the Ottomans to establish control over critical trade routes and coastal territories, from Algeria to the Levant. As Ottoman naval power grew, so did tensions with other Mediterranean powers. Venice, long the Queen of the Adriatic, found her commercial interests threatened. Spain, under the ambitious Habsburg monarchy, saw Ottoman expansion as a direct challenge to its dominion. The Knights of St. John, based on the Isle of Malta, faced increasing pressure from Ottoman fleets. The clash of civilizations that had been playing out on land for centuries now spilled onto the waves. Ottoman galleys, swift and numerous, harassed Christian shipping and raided coastal settlements. In response, the European powers sought to unite against what they perceived as a common threat to Christendom. It was Pope Pius V who finally managed to forge an alliance capable of confronting Ottoman naval might. The Holy League, formed in 1571, brought together the naval forces of Spain, Venice, and the papacy. This coalition represented the last hope of halting Ottoman expansion in the Mediterranean. The stage was set for one of the largest and most consequential naval battles in history. On October 7, 1571, off the coast of Lepanto in Greece, two massive fleets faced each other in a contest that would echo through the ages. The Holy League, under the command of Don John of Austria, deployed over 200 ships, their decks packed with soldiers and bristling with cannon. Opposing them was an equally impressive Ottoman armada led by Ali Pasha. As the sun rose over the Ionian Sea, the two fleets clashed in a fury of cannon fire, smoke, and splintering wood. The battle raged for hours, with neither side willing to yield. Christian arquebusiers exchanged fire with Ottoman archers, while galley slaves strained at their oars, driving the ships into deadly embrace. The turning point came when Don John's flagship engaged Ali Pasha's vessel in fierce combat. In a moment that would be immortalized in countless paintings and tales, the Ottoman admiral fell and his ship was captured. With their commander lost, the Ottoman fleet began to falter. By the day's end, the sea was littered with the wreckage of ships and the bodies of thousands of sailors. The Ottoman fleet had been all but destroyed, with only a fraction of their ships managing to escape. The Holy League had achieved a decisive victory, ending the myth of Ottoman invincibility at sea. Yet, the aftermath of Lepanto revealed the true resilience of the Ottoman Empire. Within a year, a new fleet had been constructed, demonstrating the vast resources and organizational capacity of the state. While the Christian powers celebrated their victory, the Ottomans were already planning their next moves. As the Ottoman Empire faced choppy waters abroad, a seismic shift in power was occurring at home. For over a century, the empire would be guided by an unlikely group of rulers, women who wielded influence from within the confines of the harem. This period, known as the Sultanate of Women, or Kadınlar Saltanati, marked a unique chapter in Ottoman history where imperial women, particularly Valdane sultans and favored consorts, held significant political sway. The roots of this era can be traced back to the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent and the rise of Hürrem Sultan, also known as Roxolana. Breaking with traditional harem customs, Hürrem became Suleiman's legal wife and trusted advisor, setting a precedent for women's involvement in state affairs. Her influence extended beyond the palace walls as she engaged in diplomacy and spearheaded charitable projects, including the construction of mosques, schools, and hospitals throughout the empire. As the 16th century progressed, the power of the Valide Sultan, or the mother of the reigning sultan, became increasingly institutionalized. Figures like Nurbanu Sultan and Safiye Sultan wielded considerable influence during the reigns of their sons and grandsons, shaping imperial policy and court politics. Their authority often surpassed that of high-ranking male officials, as they controlled access to the sultan and played pivotal roles in major decisions affecting the empire. This shift in power dynamics was particularly pronounced during the reigns of young or weak sultans. In such cases, the Valide sultans often stepped into the role of de facto regents, guiding the empire through turbulent times. Their influence extended to matters of foreign policy, domestic governance, and even military affairs, challenging traditional notions of gender roles in the Islamic world. The era of the Sultanate of Women reached its zenith with the ascendancy of Kösem Sultan, one of the most formidable figures in Ottoman history. Serving as Valide Sultan to two of her sons and later as regent for her young grandson, Kösem wielded immense authority over imperial matters for decades. Her political acumen and strategic maneuvering allowed her to navigate the treacherous waters of court politics, maintaining her grip on power through multiple sultans' reigns. However, the increased influence of imperial women coincided with a period of growing political instability within the Ottoman state. The harem, once a secluded domain, became a hotbed of political intrigue and factional rivalry. Competing groups within the palace vied for power, often leading to intense conflicts, elaborate schemes, and even assassinations. This internal strife gradually eroded the empire's central authority, contributing to long-term administrative challenges. While the Sultanate of Women had its share of political turmoil, it also saw significant contributions to Ottoman culture and society. Many of these powerful women were patrons of the arts and architecture, commissioning grand building projects and supporting cultural institutions. Their philanthropy extended to the establishment of charitable foundations, which provided essential services to the empire's diverse population. As the echoes of Kösem Sultan's demise faded, a new chapter in Ottoman history unfolded, one of paradoxical growth and decay. The empire stood at a crossroads of prosperity and peril, its vast territories stretching across 3 continents, connecting Europe, Asia, and Africa through a web of vital trade routes. In the bustling metropolises of Istanbul, Cairo, and Baghdad, the pulse of commerce beat strong. Markets overflowed with exotic goods from distant lands, fragrant spices, lustrous silks, aromatic coffee, and intricate textiles. The empire's coffers swelled with the profits of this thriving trade, fueling an era of economic expansion that touched every corner of Ottoman society. Yet beneath this glittering facade of prosperity, insidious cracks were forming in the empire's foundation. The influx of New World silver into European markets sent shockwaves through the Ottoman economy. As the value of silver plummeted, the empire's currency suffered a catastrophic devaluation. Inflation soared, eroding the purchasing power of ordinary citizens and straining the resources of the state. In the countryside, a different story unfolded. Agricultural production expanded to meet the growing demands of urban centers and international markets. However, the burden of heavy taxation fell squarely on the shoulders of peasant farmers. Corrupt local officials, more interested in lining their own pockets than serving the needs of their constituents, exacerbated the plight of rural communities. The simmering discontent eventually boiled over into open revolt, as peasants rose up against the oppressive system that threatened their livelihoods. The once vaunted Janissary Corps, long the backbone of Ottoman military might, now cast a long shadow over the empire's political landscape. Originally composed of Christian youths, conscripted through the Devshirme system and trained as elite soldiers, the Janissaries had evolved into a powerful and often volatile force within Ottoman society. Their growing involvement in palace intrigues and factional politics further destabilized an already precarious balance of power. As the central authorities' grip on the provinces weakened, local warlords, known as Ayan, rose to fill the power vacuum. These influential figures, often drawn from prominent families or military backgrounds, carved out their own spheres of influence, challenging the Sultan's authority and fragmenting the once unified governance of the empire. The Kelali revolts in Anatolia served as a stark reminder of the empire's internal vulnerabilities. These uprisings, fueled by a toxic mix of economic hardship, political discontent, and social unrest, exposed the limitations of Ottoman control over its heartland. The central government's struggle to quell these rebellions revealed a growing disconnect between the imperial center and its periphery. Beyond its borders, the Ottoman Empire found itself locked in a perpetual struggle with formidable adversaries. To the east, The Safavid Empire of Persia posed a constant threat, forcing the Ottomans to maintain a vigilant military presence along their eastern frontier. To the west, European powers, emboldened by technological advancements and growing naval capabilities, challenged Ottoman dominance in the Mediterranean and beyond. These continuous conflicts exacted a heavy toll on the empire's military and economic resources. The need to maintain large standing armies and finance costly campaigns strained the treasury, diverting funds from much-needed internal development and reforms. The empire found itself caught in a vicious cycle where external pressures exacerbated internal weaknesses, and internal instability hindered effective responses to external threats. The year 1683 would witness a clash of civilizations that would echo through centuries. At the gates of Vienna, two worlds collided in a battle that would determine the fate of an empire and reshape the map of Europe. Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, ambitious and determined, led an Ottoman army of over 150,000 troops towards Vienna, the jewel of the Habsburg Empire. This was no mere raid or show of force. It was a calculated attempt to strike at the heart of Christian Europe and expand Ottoman influence deep into the continent. The stakes were high, and both sides knew it. As July 1863 dawned, the Ottoman forces encircled Vienna, their vast numbers dwarfing the city's defenders. The siege began in earnest, with Ottoman artillery pounding the city's walls, while sappers worked tirelessly to undermine its defenses. Inside the city, Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg rallied his outnumbered troops, knowing that the fate of Central Europe hung in the balance. For 2 long months, Vienna held out against the Ottoman onslaught. The city's inhabitants faced hunger, disease, and the constant threat of breached walls. Yet, they persevered, their resolve strengthened by the knowledge that they were the last line of defense against Ottoman expansion into the heart of Europe. As summer turned to autumn, the situation grew dire for the defenders. But unbeknownst to the Ottomans, a storm was brewing on the horizon. King John III Sobieski of Poland, answering the call of the Habsburg Emperor Leopold I, was marching to Vienna's aid with a coalition of Polish, Austrian, and German forces. On September 12, 1863, the relief army crested the Kahlenberg Hills overlooking Vienna. The sight that greeted them was one of devastation and desperation. The Ottoman camp sprawled across the landscape, a city unto itself, while Vienna's walls stood battered but unbroken. What followed was one of the largest cavalry charges in history. King Sobieski, leading his famed winged hussars, descended upon the Ottoman lines like a thunderbolt. The coalition's attack caught the Ottomans off guard, sowing chaos in their ranks. Kara Mustafa Pasha, who had been so close to victory, now found his army crumbling around him. As night fell on that fateful day, the Ottoman army was in full retreat. The Battle of Vienna had ended in a crushing defeat for the empire that had once seemed unstoppable. King Sobieski, entering the abandoned Ottoman camp, is said to have paraphrased Julius Caesar's famous quote, declaring, "We came, we saw, God conquered." The aftermath of the failed siege reverberated across Europe and the Ottoman Empire. For the Europeans, it marked a turning point, the moment when the Ottoman tide began to recede. The victory galvanized Christian Europe, leading to the formation of the Holy League in 1684, a coalition determined to push the Ottomans out of Central Europe once and for all. The Tulip era, known as Lale Devri in Turkish, marked a brief but significant period of cultural flourishing and early modernization efforts during the reign of Sultan Ahmed III. This era, lasting from 1718 to 1730, derived its name from the Ottoman elite's fascination with tulips, which became a symbol of refinement and luxury. The Treaty of Passarowitz in 1718 ushered in a rare period of peace for the empire, allowing the Ottoman leadership to shift its focus inward. With external pressures temporarily alleviated, Sultan Ahmed III and his Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha embarked on a series of domestic reforms and cultural initiatives aimed at revitalizing the empire's standing. During this time, Istanbul experienced an architectural renaissance. The city's skyline was transformed with the construction of new palaces, libraries, and ornate fountains. One of the most iconic structures from this period is the Fountain of Ahmed III, located in the front of Topkapi Palace. Its intricate designs and calligraphy exemplified the artistic sophistication of the era. The Tulip era also saw the Ottoman elite embracing elements of European art, architecture, and fashion. This cultural exchange was facilitated by increased diplomatic relations with Western powers, particularly France. Ottoman ambassadors were sent to European capitals, returning with new ideas and influences that would shape the empire's artistic and intellectual landscape. One of the most significant developments of this period was the establishment of the first Ottoman printing press in 1727. Ibrahim Mutafarika, a Hungarian-born Ottoman polymath, spearheaded this revolutionary project. The introduction of printed books in the Ottoman Empire marked a turning point in the dissemination of knowledge and ideas. While religious texts remained handwritten, the printing press allowed for the mass production of secular works, including scientific treatises and historical accounts. The Tulip era was characterized by a flourishing of cultural activities. Poetry, music, and public festivals became central to Ottoman high society. Tulip gardens became popular among the elite, with rare bulbs fetching exorbitant prices. These gardens were often the setting for lavish entertainments, where poetry was recited, music was played, and the latest fashions were displayed. Economic reforms aimed to strengthen the empire's trade networks and boost domestic production. The government encouraged the cultivation of luxury goods, such as textiles and ceramics, to compete with European imports. These efforts led to a brief period of economic growth and prosperity, particularly for the urban elite. However, the extravagance and westernization associated with the Tulip era began to sow the seeds of discontent among conservative factions and the common population. While the elite enjoyed their tulip gardens and lavish entertainments, ordinary citizens faced economic hardship and rising taxes. The perceived decadence of the ruling class, coupled with the influence of foreign ideas, alarmed traditional elements within Ottoman society. This growing tension culminated in the Patrona Halil Revolt of 1730. Led by Patrona Halil, a former janissary, the uprising brought together discontented soldiers, religious conservatives, and common people who had grown weary of the excesses of the Tulip era. The rebels stormed the palace, demanding the deposition of Sultan Ahmed III and an end to the reforms and extravagances that had come to define his reign. The 18th century saw the rise of Imperial Russia as a formidable adversary, challenging Ottoman dominance in Eastern Europe and the Black Sea region. This shift in the balance of power would spark a series of conflicts known as the Russo-Turkish Wars, forcing the Ottomans to confront their military weaknesses and embark on a path of reform. The first major clash between these two empires came with the Russo-Turkish War of 1735 to 1739. This conflict tested the Ottoman military's capabilities against the rising Russian power. While the Ottomans managed to regain control of Belgrade through the Treaty of Belgrade in 1739, they were forced to cede territory in the northern Black Sea region. This loss marked the beginning of a pattern that would define Ottoman-Russian relations for decades to come. As Russia's ambitions grew, so did its naval presence in the Black Sea. The push towards the Ottoman-controlled Crimea became a focal point of tension between the two empires. The strategic importance of the Black Sea region couldn't be overstated. Control over these waters meant influence over trade routes and access to warm water ports, a long-standing goal of Russian expansion. The Russo-Turkish War of 1768 to 1774 proved to be a turning point in this ongoing struggle. The conflict ended with the devastating Treaty of Küçük-Kaynarca in 1774, which dealt a severe blow to Ottoman power and prestige. Russia gained access to the Black Sea, secured the right to protect Orthodox Christians within Ottoman territories, and exerted significant influence over the Crimean Khanate. This last point was particularly crucial, as it set the stage for Russia's eventual annexation of Crimea in 1783, a loss that shook the Ottoman Empire to its core. These military defeats exposed the glaring weaknesses in the Ottoman military system. The once feared Ottoman armies, which had struck terror into the hearts of European powers for centuries, now found themselves outmatched by modern Russian tactics and technology. The need for reform became painfully apparent, prompting a series of modernization efforts aimed at revitalizing the empire's military capabilities. Sultan Selim III emerged as a key figure in these early reform attempts. Recognizing the urgent need for change, he initiated the creation of the Nizam-i-Sadid, or New Order Army. This force was modeled after European military structures, incorporating modern training techniques and equipment. Alongside military reforms, Selim III also sought to restructure the state's financial systems to support these modernization efforts. The goal was clear: to bring the Ottoman military up to par with its European counterparts and halt the empire's decline. However, these reforms faced significant opposition from within. The Janissary Corps, once the elite fighting force of the empire, had become a powerful and conservative institution resistant to change. Many Janissaries saw the new army as a threat to their privileged position and opposed any attempts at modernization. This internal resistance created a volatile political situation, ultimately hampering the success of early reform efforts. The repeated losses in the Russo-Turkish Wars had far-reaching consequences beyond military defeats. They exposed the Ottoman Empire's vulnerabilities to the world, encouraging other powers to challenge Ottoman authority. Moreover, these conflicts cemented Russia's role as the Ottoman Empire's primary rival in Eastern Europe, a dynamic that would shape regional politics for generations to come. As the Ottoman Empire entered the 19th century, it faced a stark reality: adapt or perish. The Tanzimat era, meaning reorganization, would usher in a period of unprecedented change. But could centuries-old traditions truly be reshaped by the stroke of a sultan's pen? The seeds of reform were planted during the reign of Sultan Mahmud II, who recognized the urgent need for modernization. However, it was his son, Sultan Abdülmecid I, who truly set the wheels of change in motion. In 1839, he issued the Hati Sherif of Golani, a groundbreaking edict that promised legal equality for all Ottoman subjects, regardless of their religion or ethnicity. This was followed by the Hati Humayun of 1856, which further cemented these principles. At the heart of the Tanzimat reforms was a desire to centralize and strengthen the state. The empire had suffered humiliating military defeats and faced growing internal rebellions. European powers were increasingly influential within Ottoman territories, and the reformers believed that adopting Western practices was the key to survival. The legal system underwent a dramatic restructuring. New civil and criminal codes were introduced, drawing heavily from European models. Secular courts were established to operate alongside traditional Islamic ones, creating a dual system that sought to balance modernity with tradition. This legal reform aimed to create a more just and efficient system of governance, one that could better serve the empire's diverse population. Education became a key focus of the reformers. Recognizing that a modern state required an educated populace, they established secular schools, universities, and military academies. These institutions were designed to produce a new class of bureaucrats and officers, trained in Western methods and ready to lead the empire into a new era. The expansion of education also had the effect of exposing more Ottomans to European ideas and culture, further accelerating the pace of change. Infrastructure development was another crucial aspect of the Tanzimat reforms. Railways began to crisscross the empire, connecting distant provinces to the capital and facilitating trade and troop movements. Telegraph lines were installed, dramatically improving communication across the vast Ottoman territories. Modern ports were constructed, integrating the empire more closely with global trade networks. Economic reforms aimed to modernize the Ottoman financial system and encourage foreign investment. However, these changes had mixed results. While they did lead to increased trade and economic activity, they also deepened the empire's reliance on European loans. This financial dependency would eventually contribute to the empire's economic instability and vulnerability to foreign influence. Despite the ambitious scope of the Tanzimat reforms, they faced significant challenges. Conservative elements within Ottoman society resisted what they saw as an abandonment of traditional Islamic values. The reforms also struggled to keep pace with the growing nationalist movements in the Balkans, where subject peoples increasingly sought independence rather than equality within the empire. The effectiveness of the reforms was further hampered by the empire's vast size and diverse population. Implementing sweeping changes across such a large and varied territory proved to be an enormous challenge. Many of the reforms were unevenly applied, with their impact felt most strongly in urban areas and less so in the rural hinterlands. The Tanzimat era came to an end in 1876 with the ascension of Sultan Abdülhamid II to the throne. Initially supportive of reform, he oversaw the promulgation of the empire's first constitution. As the Ottoman Empire entered the 19th century, it faced a new and formidable challenge: the rise of ethnic nationalism. This ideological force, born from the crucible of European Enlightenment thought, began to spread like wildfire through the diverse populations of the empire. For centuries, the Ottomans had maintained a delicate balance among their various ethnic and religious groups. Now, that balance was tipping. The Balkans became the epicenter of this nationalist awakening. Inspired by the ideals of self-determination and cultural identity, various ethnic groups began to envision futures beyond Ottoman rule. The Greek War of Independence, which erupted in 1821, marked a turning point. For 9 years, Greek revolutionaries fought against Ottoman forces, capturing the imagination of Philhellenes across Europe. The eventual success of the Greek cause in 1830 sent shockwaves through the empire. It demonstrated that independence was possible, and other groups took note. Serbia, too, began its journey towards autonomy. Through a series of revolts and negotiations, the Serbian Principality gradually loosened the Ottoman grip. Meanwhile, in Bulgaria, a cultural renaissance was underway. The Bulgarian national revival fostered a sense of distinct identity, language, and history. This cultural movement laid the groundwork for political aspirations, culminating in the April Uprising of 1876. Though brutally suppressed, the uprising drew international attention to the Bulgarian cause. The Ottoman response to these movements was often heavy-handed, further alienating subject populations. Harsh repression of revolts, such as the Bulgarian Uprising, provided ammunition for critics of Ottoman rule both within and outside the empire. European powers, ever eager to expand their influence, seized upon these crises. Russia, in particular, positioned itself as the protector of Slavic and Orthodox Christians in the Balkans, intervening militarily on multiple occasions. The empire's Arab provinces, while slower to develop nationalist movements, were not immune to the winds of change. Local elites began to assert themselves more forcefully, challenging traditional Ottoman authority. The seeds of Arab nationalism were being sown, though they would not fully bloom until the early 20th century. The concept of Arab identity, distinct from Turkish rule, began to take root in intellectual circles. As nationalist movements gained strength, the Ottoman Empire found itself increasingly on the defensive. Each uprising, whether successful or not, eroded imperial legitimacy and strained resources. The empire's inability to effectively manage its diverse populations became glaringly apparent. Attempts at reform, such as the Tanzimat era's promise of legal equality for all subjects, often came too late or were implemented inconsistently. The cycle of revolt, repression, and external intervention took a heavy toll. With each passing decade, the empire lost more territory. The Congress of Berlin in 1878 redrew the map of the Balkans, further shrinking Ottoman holdings in Europe. Romania, Serbia, and Montenegro gained full independence, while Bulgaria became an autonomous principality. The Ottoman Empire, once stretching across 3 continents, was contracting before the world's eyes. This territorial fragmentation had severe economic consequences. The loss of productive regions and trade routes weakened the empire's financial position. Attempts to modernize the military and bureaucracy necessary to combat internal unrest and external threats placed enormous strain on the treasury. The empire found itself caught in a vicious cycle. Instability led to economic weakness, which in turn fueled further instability. The dawn of the 20th century brought seismic shifts to the Ottoman Empire. In 1908, a group of reformers known as the Young Turks, organized under the Committee of Union and Progress, or CUP, ignited a revolution that would reshape the empire's future. Their primary goal was to modernize and strengthen the Ottoman state, which had been declining for decades under the autocratic rule of Sultan Abdülhamid II. The Young Turk Revolution forced Abdülhamid II to restore the Ottoman constitution, which had been suspended for over 3 decades. This marked a return to parliamentary governance and briefly raised hopes for meaningful reform. The revolution was driven by a desire to centralize authority, curb European interference, and bring the empire into the modern age. However, it also intensified internal divisions that had been simmering for years. In 1909, a failed counter-coup attempt led to the deposition of Abdülhamid II. He was replaced by Mehmed V, but real power shifted to the CUP. 3 key figures emerged as the de facto rulers of the empire: Enver Pasha, Talat Pasha, and Kemal Pasha. These men would guide Ottoman policy through the tumultuous years ahead. The new regime faced immediate challenges. The Italo-Turkish War of 1911 to 1912 resulted in the loss of Libya to Italy, dealing a blow to Ottoman prestige. This was followed by the Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913, which stripped the empire of nearly all its remaining European territories. These defeats highlighted the urgent need for further reforms and modernization. Seeking to reverse its decline and regain lost territories, the Ottoman Empire made a fateful decision to enter World War I in 1914 on the side of the Central Powers. This choice would prove disastrous. The empire suffered major defeats, including a crushing loss at the Battle of Sarıkamış against Russia in the winter of 1914 to 1915. The campaign, launched in the harsh Caucasus Mountains, resulted in the loss of tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers to cold and starvation. As the war progressed, the empire faced internal rebellion. The Arab Revolt, which began in 1916 and was supported by British officer T.E. Lawrence, further weakened Ottoman control over its Middle Eastern territories. The revolt, fueled by promises of Arab independence, dealt a severe blow to Ottoman authority in the region. One of the darkest chapters in Ottoman history unfolded during this period. In 1915, the government initiated what would become known as the Armenian Genocide. This resulted in the mass deportation and deaths of over 1 million Armenians, leaving a lasting stain on Ottoman history and continuing to impact international relations to this day. The Ottoman Empire's final chapter unfolded against the backdrop of World War I, a conflict that would ultimately seal its fate. As the dust settled on the global conflict, the once mighty empire found itself on the losing side, facing a harsh reckoning. The Treaty of Sèvres, signed in 1920, dealt a crushing blow to Ottoman sovereignty. This agreement carved up the empire's remaining territories, placing vast swaths of land under Allied control and leaving only a small portion of Anatolia under Ottoman rule. For many Turks, the Treaty of Sèvres represented not just defeat, but humiliation. It sparked a fierce nationalist backlash, rallying those who refused to accept the dismemberment of their homeland. From this cauldron of resentment and determination emerged a figure who would reshape the course of Turkish history, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Ataturk, a decorated military officer, became the driving force behind the Turkish War of Independence. This conflict, lasting from 1919 to 1923, saw Turkish nationalists wage a determined struggle against occupying forces. The war was marked by several pivotal engagements, including the Battle of Sakarya in 1921. This grueling 3-week confrontation saw Ataturk's forces successfully repel a Greek offensive, boosting Turkish morale and turning the tide of the conflict. The following year, Turkish forces achieved another crucial victory at the Battle of Dumlupinar. This engagement shattered Greek resistance in Anatolia, paving the way for the recapture of Izmir and effectively ending the Greek presence in the region. These military successes strengthened Ataturk's position and demonstrated the viability of an independent Turkish state. As the war progressed, the very foundations of Ottoman rule began to crumble. In November 1922, the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, established by Ataturk and his supporters, took the momentous step of abolishing the Ottoman Sultanate. This act brought an end to over 6 centuries of Ottoman imperial rule. Sultan Mehmet VI, the last to sit on the Ottoman throne, fled Istanbul, seeking refuge abroad and symbolizing the final dissolution of the empire. The Turkish nationalist triumph led to a new round of negotiations with the Allied powers. The result was the Treaty of Lausanne, signed in 1923. This agreement superseded the earlier Treaty of Sèvres and recognized the sovereignty of the new Turkish state. It established the borders of modern Turkey, securing Turkish control over Anatolia and eastern Thrace while relinquishing claims to former Ottoman territories in the Middle East and North Africa. On October 29, 1923, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk proclaimed the establishment of the Republic of Turkey. This declaration marked the formal birth of the modern Turkish state and a decisive break from the Ottoman past. Ankara, rather than Istanbul, was chosen as the capital of the new republic, symbolizing a fresh start and a shift away from the imperial legacy. The following year saw another seismic shift in Turkish society. In March 1924, Ataturk and the Grand National Assembly abolished the